and take your browser over to supertalktv.com. You'll see and meet Miss Erin Abbott. She's a Mississippi writer and photographer, and she says now is the perfect time to get outdoors and take a family field trip. So welcome, Erin.
Thank you so much for having me.
I love this idea of a family field trip as we get ready for our kids to go back to school, eventually coming up this fall and even spring. They'll be going on the field trips of their own. But I never stop to think about creating those opportunities as a family. So tell us what it means to take a family field trip.
Yeah, so it just means getting out there and looking for experiences that are engaging your children through, it could be culture, food, design, art, nature, all the wonderful things that Mississippi has to offer. And they're everywhere around us. You just kind of have to, once you start looking for them, you find them everywhere.
You kind of look at it with a different perspective. You want people to think about being a traveler, maybe not necessarily a tourist. And even in our own hometown or our own home state, I feel like we miss so many opportunities to be a traveler, other than just a resident. And when you shift that mindset, you go about looking for things to do differently, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
So give us a little experience about all your travels, because this doesn't come from someone who's just sat at home and not done anything. You've got some trips under your belt and some experience with traveling with kids. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I worked as a travel nanny for a long time. And I was also a teacher for many years. So with travel nannying, I was thrown into these environments that I had never been to in many, many situations. And so I was forced to kind of find those opportunities and explore with the kids that were under my wing.
Are kids more open-minded to exploring their surroundings than you think adults are?
Oh, I think they're constantly curious and looking for new experiences. They are just wide-eyed, and I always tell my son, like, put your adventure goggles on because, we don't know what we're going to see. And he at 10 years old, he's still completely on board.
I feel like two parents or I guess adults, caregivers, or even great aunts and uncles, they can miss out on seeing even their own backyard through the eyes of their kids if they don't watch it, which is two totally different experiences. They seem to just lead into the mysteries and making up, using their imaginations in a place they see every day, where adults just kind of wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, I think leading with some open-ended questions really keeps the conversation going to keep us engaged with their imagination as well. When my son sees something, I'll ask a question with a question, and then that just kind of snowballs into an entire lesson that we've learned. And a lesson could be 5 minutes, it could be an hour. You don't really know what you're going to get, but you don't have to approach it like, okay, I have to, set a timer or anything like that. It's just very organic education.
You believe in family field trips so much that you wrote the book about it. So how did the book Family Field Trip come about, Erin? I think this is really neat.
Yeah, so I was working on my first book, and my son was about 3 years old, and I was taking him, it was at an age where I wanted to take him and my husband with me while I was photographing for the first book. And along the way, it was just like, we're making so many wonderful experiences out of these travels, and the education that we were, exposing my son to, it really lended itself naturally to my next book. And that was Family Field Trip. And it was taking everything that I had done as a nanny, as a travel nanny, and everything. My background is in early childhood education. So it's, again, a natural, progression to write a book about something I'm so passionate about, education and travel mixed together, and how to, really bring that home, because it's not everyone can get out and travel. And so it's how to find those experiences from your home, how to introduce your children to the world around us, and beyond, from home and beyond.
It's not just a book, too, Family Field Trip. It's also like an activity guide. I think I read you had like 75 different activities for families to do together. I like the idea that you can do those wherever, because even if you are on vacation, maybe your favorite beach spot or mountain spot or wherever it may be, you could pull out these activities and have a new go at your favorite vacation getaway. But what are some of those activities? How did you come up with 75? That feels like a lot. It feels very like you've done a lot.
It feels like a lot, but once you start like, kind of like getting into this mindset, you realize that that's just scratching the surface. There's literally hundreds of educational things around us that we're doing with our kids all the time that we don't even realize. And we're keeping them curious and engaged all the time. And we might not even realize what an influence that we have on them for their learning. And so, yeah, it's little things like if you're at the beach, as you mentioned, like looking for tide pools or, and just talking about what's in the tide pool and talking about the tides and looking at the birds and, talking about birds that are migrating past or that live there at the beach, and the different, environments that those birds have. And, all of that is education to these kids. And it's a snowball effect of learning around us.
You bring up a good point, thinking about just field trips, thinking back to the, now as a mom, I get the chance to go on them. And I'm like, oh, wow, they're learning so much. I'm learning so much while I'm on the chaperoning her field trip. And it's like, I don't remember learning all that as a kid on our field trips, but it was just sort of snuck in there in a really fun and educational kind of way. And I think sometimes parents and grandparents, we just put too much pressure on ourselves, like, oh, we can't teach, we can't do that. That's above our pay grade or above, our abilities. But really, you have opportunities every day to sort of sneak in those little bit of lessons and, stoke their curiosity.
Absolutely. And I mean,
go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so let's break it down with the 75. I mean, we mentioned the beach, but here in Mississippi, we've got the beach, we've got, the Central, and we've got the Pines, and we've got the, all the aboves, and I think you're in North Mississippi. So are there activities for education no matter where you are, sort of environmentally outside?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I think is really fun that encompasses the whole state is the Blues Trail. It starts in the north and goes all the way down to the south. And what we've done when we've driven along the Blues Trail in the Delta is we listen to we'll listen to the artist whose plaque we see on the way to the next one. So we'll find them on Spotify or whatever streaming service, and then we talk about that musician on the way to look for the next one, and we make it a scavenger hunt almost, looking for these different markers. And you could do the same with like the Mississippi Literary Trail, that's a newer addition to the state, and talk about the different writers of the state. Or there's so many wonderful people that are from here that we've gone on to know about around the world, like Jim Henson and James Earl Jones that does the voice for Darth Vader. I mean, my son loves the Darth Vader's from Mississippi.
That should be a bumper sticker.
I know,
Darth Vader's from Mississippi.
I mean, it's true. Yeah. So, I mean, like there's so many like little things like that you don't even really think about as being educational, but there's these great markers all over our state, and you can get maps of them and find where they all are and everything. And then we love to get outside and explore in nature, like Sky Lake over in the Delta is a wonderful learning experience. You're on these boardwalks through 1,000-year-old cypress trees, and you're above the water, and it's like this magical experience that you wouldn't think would be here, and especially in the Delta. So it's just, there's Tishomingo State Park is another great place to get out and
And plan a
explore and
family
they're
field trip, which is what we're doing with Miss
yes.
Erin Abbott. We've got more coming up next here on Good Things. Find out more. We're learning more about what it means to plan a family field trip from Mississippi writer and photographer Erin Abbott. She is a freelance photographer, and her family makes their home in Water Valley in North Mississippi. Erin, where is Water Valley on the map?
We are about 15, 20 minutes from Oxford.
Okay. So, what are some of the good field trip options you've got right there in your own backyard?
Yeah, so we are situated right between three lakes. We have Enid, Sardis, and Grenada Lake right around us. So we have endless sources of trails and water activities to do around here. We're not far from Tishomingo State Park. That's just an hour and a half or so away. Um, then we've got the Delta to the west, and we're kind of situated right in the middle of lots and lots of great opportunities here in Mississippi.
For someone who has traveled the world, even as a travel nanny, who knew that was even a job that someone could afford for themselves? So, I mean, what a very interesting line of work, but I guess needed. I mean, necessary for some families. How does what we have here in Mississippi compare to things in other states or in other countries in terms of educational opportunities or rich history to be learned or adventures to be had?
Well, we definitely have rich history. I mean, it is, we have so many writers and musicians and, so many people, as I mentioned previously, that are from this area that, that we can definitely learn from. And as far as, just getting outside, it's such a beautifully green state that I think a lot of people maybe take for granted, because you go some places and they're either having a drought, and I feel like we're in this lush, environment that we just need to embrace as much as possible.
And definitely not take for granted, which sometimes it can be easy to do when you call it home and you don't know
Yeah.
anything, any different sort of way. You also are a successful photographer. I mean, man, over on your Instagram account, you got nearly 5,000 people who like the photos that you take in, or 50,000, excuse me. That's a big difference. Big difference of followers there
That's
who are
okay.
interested in your work. And to me, it's always neat to hear what people photographers like look for in terms of inspiration on the other end of the camera, because everyone can look through the same device but they see something completely different to capture in the moment or within the frame. So in terms of photography, I mean, what draws your eye? What are you looking for or snapping photos of?
Since becoming a mom, a lot of things that I'm looking for is kind of seeing what my son sees, seeing it through his eyes. Um, and that might be, there's a lot of time when you look through my Instagram, you'll see like a lot of times it's the back of my son's head, and then what we're seeing in front of us. And I think that's because I'm really curious in like the child's view of wonder, just the wonderment that a child has. And so I think I'm really drawn to things that make you feel really comfortable, but also like you want to see more, is kind of what I'm drawn to.
When did you get the travel bug? I mean, you've got extensive travel, obviously, to taking photos. Did that all come together? Was it a way of sort of, you know, uh, taking note of your travels that you started photography, or which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Well, it's interesting. And I think that something that, as we're talking about these family field trips, that's important to note is that I started traveling with my mom as a child. And I think that when we expose our children to other places and environments and cultures and things like that, that's going to stay with them for the rest of their lives. It's stayed with me. It's something I've done since I was younger than my son, and so I think that it's just something that it's all I've known is traveling and experiencing other ways and different foods and culture and that sort of thing. And so it's just ingrained in me at this point. But as far as photography, I got my first camera when I was in second grade, and I've kind of never put one down since.
That's kind of scary to think of what all you were taking photos of in the second grade. I have an almost fifth grader, and I would be shocked to develop some of those. They would all be silly and nonsense. But it is interesting.
It was all silly
Yeah.
nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about kids traveling, I think sometimes parents too, we leave them home when we go on the cool trips because we don't either want to hassle with them, and rightfully so. We do deserve a little bit of time separated. Not that you can't take your kids with you, but to encourage folks to take them on, different types of adventures that you may go on. Kids can probably hang in there more than we give them credit for when we give them the opportunity to explore and be curious, right?
Absolutely, 100%. I think my husband and I have gone away for one weekend since our son was born by ourselves. And that's just because we really enjoy having him part of the process and part of the adventure. I think that people think like, oh, they won't remember it if they're, much younger. And really all of it is part of their core memories and their experience of learning. It's all part of that, like that early childhood education. And even if you can't get out and travel, you can bring that culture and its sense of adventure home. Just get a library card and check out a bunch of books and do a field trip at home. Like check out books on a country and just embrace, that culture at home. Cook the food from that culture and have a international supper club and like have a little film festival and listen to the music from that country and, just really embrace another place. And you've got your field trip from another place around the world right here in your living room or your kitchen.
And you can get inspired by that by your book, Family Field Trip. So where do we find it, Erin? How do we go about getting it?
Yeah, so you could go to my Instagram and it has a bio for where to find it, my website, like all the things. So it's Erin Austen Abbott as my Instagram, and that's Austen with an E. And otherwise, you can find Family Field Trip anywhere books are sold. Your local bookstore. We carry signed copies at Square Books here in Oxford, but you can get it just about anywhere.
Favorite family field trip the Abbotts have been on locally? Pick one.
Oh, locally. Well, I would say Sky Lake. I mentioned it earlier, and it is an absolutely like transportive little nature walk, and we absolutely loved it. And we also did like a weekend staycation in DeSoto County, which was really fun because we could go to like the Mississippi River and the Blues Trails and eat really good food, and that was really, really fun.
Family field trip internationally.
Well, we just went 2 weeks ago. We went to the Pacific Northwest and then went up to Canada for the day, and took a ferry there, and it was really, really fun. That's just a little bit of international, but it was a great experience.
One place in Mississippi you hadn't seen yet that's on your family field trip to-do list?
The coast. I haven't been to like Biloxi or I've been to Gulfport, but we haven't like been down on the coast and explored down there.
More.
Like Bay St. Louis. I want to go to Bay St. Louis.
You better plan more than just a day trip for that one, but make sure you take the lighthouse tour that's offered there on the Gulf Coast, as well as, man, we could sit here and give you a whole itinerary of things that you'd need to.
I know we just haven't gotten down there. I don't know why. I guess we're just too far north, but we've got to make it happen.
You've got to make it happen. Well, there's a lot of people listening to Good Things on the Mississippi Gulf Coast that also have not explored North Mississippi. Every time I hear Tishomingo State Park, I go, ugh. That's one thing I desperately want our family to do. We've just never
Yeah.
made it a priority to put that on our to-do list to get up there and enjoy. But I've heard nothing but good things and family fun
Wonderful.
there at the
We
park.
could
Well, I
trade notes.
appreciate.
Well,
We could totally trade notes.
yeah, I'll plan yours and you plan mine, and we'll be good.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. Well, this has been fun,
Yeah.
Erin. I appreciate that.
Thank
Again,
you.
remind us where we go to find you online.
ErinAustenAbbott.com or on Instagram, Erin Austen Abbott, and you'll find me. Austen
find
is
me.
with an E, like Jane Austen.
Oh, I love that. Okay. All right. Stick with
Yeah.
us. We got more for you coming up next.